You're listening to the Call Kent podcast, where Kent C. Dodds answers questions and gives insights to software engineers like you. Now, let's hear the call.
Hey Kent, it's Jan. What do you do in your action function in Remix for a page with multiple forms if no intent matches? Let's say you have a page with two forms, one for deleting an entity and one for duplicating it. So the page has two forms, each with a button of type submit, one with an intent of delete and one with an intent of duplicate. Now, what do you do if the request to that action function contains form data with neither intent? In Ryan's Remix single, where he shows how to handle multiple forms, his action is a void promise and returns nothing in the case where none of his intents match. But should you do that in a production app? Just don't do anything? Thanks for your help and thank you for answering yesterday's question about testing tables. It helped me out tremendously. Take care!
And that was the call. Here's what Kent had to say.
Hey, Jan, thank you for the question as always. So yes, this is a great question. I think that I'm not sure why Ryan didn't do what I'm about to suggest in his Remix single. But what I do is I throw an error. Typically, in situations like that, like you are the only one who's going to be consuming or not consuming, but making a call to that action, at least in expected cases. If other people can call that action just by curling the URL or using Postman or something like that. But all of those cases would be unexpected. And so doing anything useful is not necessary. And so I would just throw an error. And that's what I do. You could return a response that's like a JSON. Status 400 probably is most appropriate there because it's the status code that you send back if you say, hey, there's something wrong with your request. I think it's called malformed request. But the only people who would ever see that are in two camps. One, the camp of people who are just playing around with your server and trying to see if they can exploit any vulnerabilities. And personally, I don't really care about those people. I don't want to communicate properly to them. I'll just throw an error. Or the alternative is, and of course, like it's not going to make your server fall over if you throw an error. Remix is going to catch it. It'll send a 500 and that's fine. But the other camp of people would be if you made a mistake and forgot to include an intent in some form that you are submitting. And in that case, that is your fault. And that is not expected behavior for the way that you're building it. And so you'll immediately fix it. I think it's useful to throw a useful error message, at least somewhat useful. So I typically say, throw new error, invalid intent, and then I'll specify what the intent was. And so then if I'm testing it out, then I can see, oh, I didn't specify an intent or whatever it was. But that's what I typically do. The plus side of that is when you throw an error, then that code path does not flow into the return value for your action. And so TypeScript will ignore that code path as far as what the return value could possibly be, so that the only return values for your action will be those which are actual, like possible return values for your action. So anyway, I hope that is helpful to you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
This has been the Call Kent podcast. Learn more about Kent at kentcdodds.com and get your own questions answered at kentcdodds.com/calls.